Hamjiga Abaja. My name is Tyler Peterson. I know most of you from classes and things. I'm glad you came. I'm honored to welcome our friends and colleagues from the Fort McDowell Yavapai Nation. We've got Donald Beckman and
Hello.
Debbie.
How are you guys?
Debbie Haynes, and Ray Bear, and Clasine Lewis with us. Someone else is going to come out here today, but she's not feeling well, Wendy Thomas, but she's a really important part of our group, and our thoughts are with her. We wish she was here. So, yeah, you could sort of get a feel for the vibe of something like this. The point of what we're doing today is, well, there are a couple of points. The focus of what we're doing is to talk about a specific point in the history of Fort McDowell called the Orme Dam, and this is a project that we're working on. But that's only a part of what we're doing. I would say the main aim of having this meeting is for you to become familiar and meet people from a local community. Okay, what I mean by local is local to Arizona State University, where we are here. Has anybody here driven up to Payson? What's that highway number? 87. If you've taken the 87 up to Payson, out of Mesa there, you go through Salt River, Pima Maricopa Indian Community, and then you go into Fort McDowell Yavapai Nation, just across the bottom of it there, on your way to Payson. So you've already been there, even though you might not have known that. And so this is a good opportunity to know that. And our neighbors and our colleagues and our friends from really close by, okay? So the connection should be hopefully easy to make that way. And so that's really the larger aim of what we're doing, is so you can get to know our neighbors and some of the really great work that we've been doing together over the past, well, for me, it's about 5 years now. And also to get familiar with some of the ongoing activities that we have. And you can see from this nice schedule that we have here that Clasine put together. So we've got a few things planned for the next 90 minutes. You're going to hear a little bit about tribal history, and then you're going to hear about, from Ray, the activities on the nation now, today, and then I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing together, and then we'll focus, and that'll be a sort of a segue into talking about the focus that I mentioned earlier, which is something that's really kind of captivated me, that I've become very interested in, and I'm really happy that some of my students have as well. And that's talking about a very seminal moment in Fort McDowell history, which is the Orme Dam, and you'll be learning about that too. And I think you'll find it very interesting. So yeah, and then after that we'll have lunch. I think it's over on the other side there. So I'd like to invite Clasine Lewis to come up here now. I think your computer's all ready to go. Clasine is the director of the Fort McDowell Yavapai Nation Culture and Museum. And she's got a presentation about tribal history.
So thank you, Tyler, for your kind invitation for us to come and share the work that we've been doing, and at this moment, a little bit of our Yavapai journey. But before we start anything, as we do always in Indian communities, and I would say generally across the country, we always want to start with an opening prayer. So I'd like to invite Raphael Bear, our former tribal president, to come and share a prayer. So if you all could just please stand and
All righty.
let me see if it's on. Is it on?
Traditional to pray, and often to the east we look towards in reverence to our Creator and to the east direction. Wahoo, Bia Cha Quad. You make nyata pan mew, yak matapam chuom, Quint Pai Hankam. Wanyam, Quakia, Chukawaika, Bacha, Kia, Quint Pai, Quakawicha, Yathe, Hata Amjo Kia, Wika, Quint Paitha, Bad Kia, Wik, Chukawahik. Yum, Quint Pai Hanek, Ikum, Ik Kobavacum. Quim Macha Ikabav, Quarkum, Quint Pai Hanek, Spirik, wasivjik hanek, mata vok han, Kwevkepaya hanek kavavkom. Wanyampe, nita Kwevkepaya kya chikwawa, yik chikwawa hek ya kakanu nokum, yung kavav nyukwarkam nyukwara. Kwevkepaya ya manpe bakavav nyukwarkam, nita kik nyawat gaichum yuk tar har kyuk. Kwevkepaya wichik, nyuik bakavav nyukwarkam, Kwevkepaya hana hek, mata wave spirik, wasivja wave spirik. Paracha weave spirit. Kwevkepaya he wide weave you the jump. Mad setik nyacha pam spom, mad setik nyan pam niovum. You kanak ariaikom. Our Creator, our Father, you put us here, you know all about us, each and every one of us. We thank you this day. As we honor you in all the things that we will do today and talk about the Yavapai language, Yavapai business, Yavapai ways, everything today, we thank you for that. We thank you as we go through this, that you will give us that strength to do those things and say those things properly and respectfully. We also ask a prayer for all the presenters. We also ask a prayer for all our students, our young people here. Their minds be clear, their hearts open, their bodies strong. Someday as they go into the workforce, we pray for them as well, that they will do those things necessary that are possible, that you know, that we may not even know today, but you know will be done. So everything you hear today, we pray. We also pray for the food that we're about to eat. Thank you for all these things. Everything here we pray for. Wow. Amen.
Amen. So I'm going to have to ask Justin to help, and maybe Tyler to help them move on the side there so that they can see the screen.
Oh, yeah, of course.
So
Here, we'll leave this chair here.
yeah,
Actually,
they're
we
going
could
to
even
help
just
you.
leave
They
the
can just
chairs
move
there.
them to the side.
Or we could just take these chairs here. Either way. Are you okay? No, it's okay. Are you all right? That's fine. Don't worry about it.
It's secret.
You get wheels on your chair there too. You can spin around.
Donald, you got to sit over there.
Yeah, but I'm, what happened, y'all?
Okay, here we go. Is it better with the light on or the light off? You guys okay? Okay, I just want to make sure you're able to see. Let me see if I can see my screen here.
That clicker should work okay for you guys.
Okay.
Why don't I turn it off here?
No, don't turn it off. I have a camera.
Okay. That didn't do it anyway.
So here we go. So there's a few slides in here, but I'm not going to try to make it too long, too lengthy, but also want to leave it open for questions afterwards, if that's okay. Here we go. Apache. Yavapai's original name is Apache, which means people. The Apache trekked about 10 million acres of land. There are 4 sub-tribes, Yavapai, Wipukpa, Tokapaya, and Kwevkepaya. Now, notice, as I said, we trekked. So we didn't, the Yavapai, the Apache people, were hunters and gatherers, right? Until, unfortunately, we became the hunted and the gathered over time. We moved from camp to camp, and we moved with the seasons, where food like prickly pear, berries, acorn, and nuts were ripened, and we hunted wild game for food source. Our food sources such as deer and rabbits, quail, and yeah, even rats we call mulka, and that we made stews out of, and we also used the deer meat for jerky meat. Our first outside contact, 1592, Yavapai's first contact with the outside world was with the Spanish. 1848, Yavapai's first contact with the U.S. In 1863, President Lincoln proclaims Arizona a territory, and gold is found in central Arizona. Now let me stop for a moment. Not only gold, but there were a couple of other things. What do you think they were? Gold, silver, copper. The 1860s, military forts are established in Arizona. In 1865, to be more precise, Camp McDowell, currently Fort McDowell, was established in Yavapai territory, and Yavapai land is desired. These are Yavapai warriors, and in the 1870s, Yavapais were ordered to surrender and turn themselves in. They were ordered to report to Rio Verde, near Camp Verde today, and told that they would receive food, clothing, and shelter. But the real purpose for the roundup was to force Yavapais into reservation confinement as a way to obtain native lands. Many of our Yavapai people turned themselves in, and many died from infected blankets, poisoned food, and some were just massacred. A real tragedy for sure. In 1872, Skeleton Cave Massacre. Yavapai remains at Skeleton Cave. The Skeleton Cave Massacre was first known as the quote-unquote the Battle of Salt River Canyon. The Tonto Basin campaign was led by Lieutenant Colonel George Crook of the United States 5th Cavalry. Unfortunately, this was not a battle, it was a Yavapai massacre. In 1925, Fort McDowell Yavapais retrieved the bones of their relatives and reburied them at our Fort McDowell Cemetery. Skull Valley Massacre. Many Yavapai families were lured, this is a Date Creek, were lured into a massacre trapped by U.S. soldiers who promised them food, as I said earlier, clothing and shelter. They were poisoned, massacred by the U.S. soldiers. There were many skulls left behind, so it was called Skull Valley. I just want to stop for a moment to make a note that one of our elders, her name was Miss Quayle, Miss Nellie Quayle, and she was born in the late 1800s. And she shares a story that she learned from her father about the Skull Valley Massacre. And she learned this story from her father who lived through it, and so she learned it from his firsthand account. And he told her that when he was a little boy, he was only about 6 or 7 years old, and when the military were going around and trying to find Yavapais, they would take them to the camp and feed them and things like that. And some Yavapai groups would just turn themselves in, surrender, I guess you could say, to avoid being, massacred or not wanting to give in to this new way of life, this, a culture to become acculturated, right, into mainstream society. So a lot of them held out. That being said, Nellie Quayle's father, his name was Sam Axe, and he told Miss Quayle that when he was a little boy and his little group turned themselves in, and when he was in the camp, it'd kind of be like this, maybe this is a camp, and he said that the soldiers would make the stew, cut up a cow and make stew, but he noticed that they poured like white powder in the stew, and he didn't know what it was for. And I'm thinking, because this is on audio, and I'm wondering, gosh, was it salt or what was it? But he said that Sam Axe said after he noticed that people were eating it, they started dying. It was poison. So a lot of the Yavapais held back and said, they weren't going to eat it. So the ones who did not eat it, the United States Army just started shooting them. And Sam Axe says that as a little boy, he ran behind the a military building, and he picked up a military axe, just a little, like a hatchet, I guess you could say, axe, and he started like trying to cut wood, or he didn't know what to do. He was so afraid. And a soldier came back on a horse and saw him and looked at him, but he didn't bother him. He just rode off. So the soldiers left, and all he could hear was women and children crying. And when he came out, he saw his family, his camp, the people dying or dead. And he says that they shouldn't have called it like Skull Valley. They should have called it the place of no shame. Because they had no shame to kill Native people. They had no shame to kill women and children. They had no shame of what they did. So I too call that place the place of no shame. And as a young boy, having to grow, and whoever else survived, had to live through this. And eventually he caught up with another group, or some other people found him, another Yavapai group, and he went on to go on with his life. In the mid-1860s, the U.S. government started building forts in Yavapai territory. They said their purpose was to place military men in these areas to protect the early white settlers from being attacked by the Apaches. Now, I won't go deep into that because that's a long history for another long time. In 1865, this actual picture is Camp McDowell, which is where we're from, and we reside now at Fort McDowell. So this picture was taken in 1865. This is the military personnel, the personnel at Camp McDowell. So again, these camps were set up in different places throughout Yavapai territory. The new Camp McDowell was soon built up and occupied by soldiers along with their families. In 1872, Yavapais were ordered to surrender. The mandate was given to turn themselves in. This was that beginning of forced removal and reservation confinement. Many Yavapais did surrender, but some didn't. In 1872, the directive that went out was really the beginning of our becoming prisoners of war. Many Yavapai bands and groups fled to the mountains to escape forced removal. A takeover by a foreign country. Indians were forced to become Americanized. The Yavapai did all they could to resist. And credit to our ancestors. We're still here. That's a great credit to them. Not something that we did, but our ancestors did. We stand, and I'm sure you've heard the phrase, we stand and continue to stand on their shoulders. And then our young ones will stand on our shoulders. Following the order of surrender, only 3 years later in 1875, the Yavapai were exiled to a place called Old San Carlos. Now, it's not where modern-day San Carlos is. It's another 30 miles east of where Old San Carlos is. And that's where we were taken. We were exiled from the Rio Verde Reservation. They moved us again in 1875. You can see the line here. Does this have a...
No, it doesn't, no. We need your laser.
No, but do you have one? Okay. That's okay. So the Yavapai Exodus. In 1875, the Yavapai were forced to walk to a place called Old San Carlos. And here we lived with the Apaches for 25 years. Notice this picture. It's a beautiful picture. It's actually a big statue. It's probably as high as maybe from the ceiling to the top. And that's in, that picture, or that statue is actually at Camp Verde Reservation. And it's because the woman, she was paralyzed from the hips down. She couldn't walk. But the rule was, for the Army soldiers, Indians were not allowed to get on the wagons, and we weren't allowed to ride horses. We had to walk. Those were reserved for the military. So they told this man, this Yavapai man, just leave your wife because she's not going to make it. He said, I won't. I can't leave her. They said, well, she's going to die out there. So he took a burden basket and he made 2 holes. And he put her in it. And he carried the whole way. Now that is authentic love. Not love that we just say loosely. Especially as young people. Be careful how you use that word. Because love is more than a feeling. It's a sacrifice. And it's work. It's not supposed to be easy and fun all the time. Because that's just not how life is. He carried her all the way from the Rio Verde Reservation to Old San Carlos Reservation. And they made it. So this man, although he was told to leave his ailing wife, he carried her on his back. And they made the journey. This is just a picture of Old San Carlos. This is what's left. You see those little kind of like remains back. Those were the BIA buildings. You know what BIA stands for? Bureau of Indian Affairs. Did you guys know that? Well, it might be in your way, but in our way, it stands for just bossing Indians around. Yeah, it is, actually. And do you know the BIA still exists? Do you know that we have to go and work with the BIA to have anything changed? We still do. But, fortunately, the Yavapais rose up and said they wanted to leave Old San Carlos and return to their homeland. 25 years later, the Yavapais left Old San Carlos and returned back to Yavapai territory. Some went to Prescott, some went to Camp Verde, some went to even Payson, and others went to Fort McDowell. That's how we got to different places. So all those other ones that are like Prescott Yavapai tribe, and Camp Verde Yavapai Apache, they're our sister tribes. We just had a pie gathering. Pie meaning people, not apple pie, but pie spelled P-A-I, meaning people. And we're all a human speaking language. So we just had a gathering over this weekend, which was a great time to gather and to share. And different Yavapais from different areas and human languages, people who speak human language came to celebrate with us. These are military men at Camp McDowell, and it was abandoned eventually in 1890. And the Yavapais returned and formed a group of leaders. Tom Saruma becoming our first Yavapai chairman, I guess you could say, or president. So our return home. In 1903, the Fort McDowell Reservation was created for the Yavapai people by executive order President Theodore Roosevelt. Under the order, all lands which were not legally claimed by Americans were to be turned over to the Yavapai who are living in the area. So we're only 10 miles by like 5 miles or 4 miles. But that was a good thing. That we were able to obtain some of our land. Mike Harrison and John Williams, thoughts and beliefs about Yavapai spirituality. Every morning, the Yavapai greeted the living sun as it filled them with new life. Theirs was a way of life with an undeniable strong connection between the land and their religious beliefs. They felt that their religious beliefs of the Yavapai had served the Yavapai well and provided them with a solid foundation. Here's a nice little quote by one of our late elders, John Williams. He said, "I know that my people know God. I know that my people know what God is to them." To the Yavapai, dance is a prayer. It's a prayer to our Mother Earth. When military forts were established in 1865, the Yavapai could no longer use these places for ceremonies, which began at the time of when Fort McDowell was created in 1902 and 1903. 1866, Wasacha is born. Carlos Montezuma, his Yavapai name was Wasacha. He was stolen by the Pimas during the Apache raids. As a young boy, he was sold to an Italian photographer, Carlos Gentile, for $30. And Carlos Gentile, you can see in that first picture. He moved him back to Illinois, Chicago, and they also went to New York because he was a photographer. He raised him, and he grew up he was acculturated from a young age. So he advocated for that until he learned the plight of his own people. Wasacha was fully acculturated, having gone to public schools in Chicago and New York. He attended the Chicago Medicine School and graduated as one of the first Native American doctors at the young age of 24 years old. How about that? He graduated high school at the age of 14. Now, I believe in that era, it was almost kind of normal. The education system obviously was very good. And so, and they were more strict. So, but that being said, they would graduate at a young age. But he was the first Native American doctor in the United States. Wasacha, the advocate. Wasacha returned home to Fort McDowell and was an advocate for all Indians, not just Fort McDowell. He helped to guide the Fort McDowell with our water rights, especially the Orme Dam project that would have flooded our reservation in 1975. That's what Tyler is going to be talking a little bit about, of us working on this project, of our elders, such as Raphael Bear. By the way, Raphael Bear, who is sitting here, is a former tribal president of ours, and our elder Donald Beckman. They're fluent speakers, along with Wendy Thomas. So they're sharing this story. I don't want to give too much away, but of Orme Dam, which would have pretty much flooded out our nation. And they're sharing it in Yavapai, and we're breaking it down. So here's a little picture of Save Our Land by our kids back in the 70s. The Orme Dam project. Congress approved the CAP, Central Arizona Water Project, in 1968, which would have called for the construction of Orme Dam at the confluence of the Salt and Verde rivers. "I propose," said the Interior Secretary Stuart Udall, "to make the small but fine little reservoir we are creating here into an Indian recreation development." What Udall didn't say was that the dam would have flooded more than half of the reservation, including most of the tribal farm. The Yavapais fought the project. We won, by the way. But again, I don't want to give too much away because Tyler's going to explain some of that. Okay, we're getting close to the end here. Yavapais fight for the right to vote. Harrison versus Levine, 1948. The 1928 ruling, Porter versus Hall, stated natives were persons, quote unquote, under guardianship. Section 2, Article 7 of the Constitution of Arizona said that such persons were ineligible to vote, even though we were citizens in 1924 under Calvin Coolidge. In 1948, two men from Fort McDowell, there's Harry Austin and Frank Harrison, were denied the right to register to vote by the Arizona County Recorder Roger Levine. Harrison and Austin filed suit. They lost the first case but filed an appeal, with the Arizona Supreme Court. The case was overturned, and Indians were granted the right to vote in the state of Arizona in 1948. So it really paved the way for Indian voting in the state of Arizona. Little Fort McDowell. May 12th, the 1992 Yavapai Resistance. Fort McDowell community standoff with FBI agents protecting tribal sovereignty. So this was really about FBI agents coming, raiding our video gaming machines in 92 in the middle of the night. And Fort McDowell stood up, and there was only one way to go in and one way to go out. And they put up a blockade. And all the women, one of them was Debbie Haynes. Debbie Haynes is my assistant at the cultural department. And she, along with other women, they locked arms, and they wouldn't let the trucks get out. So what happened was our tribal council was keen enough to tell our young men to go to Public Works and get our heavy equipment. And that's what you see that picture. They put up a blockade so they couldn't get out until we had some negotiation. Speaking of negotiation. So a new march. So in Orme Dam, we marched to the state capitol. This was a new march in 1992. People of the Fort McDowell Yavapai Nation walked about 35 miles to the state capitol in protest for sovereignty rights. Theodore Roosevelt told us when he signed the executive order in 1903 that we would never be removed from our land again. These are the people rising up and saying, no, based on tribal sovereignty, we were not going to give in and just let the machines go. And so we rallied. Indians from across the country started calling us and asking us to, how can we help? And we had a 10-day cooling off period. And so a lot of people protested and rallied behind Indian gaming. I won't tell you who that person is, but you can probably see. And so I was invited to give a talk when I was probably your age, to talk about how, about not just sovereignty, but about how Indian gaming has impacted our lives. And without Indian gaming, I wouldn't have been able to return to school like you, and actually I came here through the American Indian Studies program here at ASU many years ago. And I'm grateful, but it was because of a scholarship I was able to obtain through our tribe. And I learned how to become an Indian. No, I'm just kidding. But so I was called to say something, and it was by Debbie Haynes' uncle. He was a vice chairman at the time, Gilbert Jones. And he asked me to come up and say something that night. And I didn't know what to say, but I said a little prayer, and I don't remember everything I said. I do remember saying that Americans will never understand America until they understood the people. And all the people said, hip, hip, hooray. So, with that, a new gaming compact. Governor Five Symington was forced to sign, he was the governor for Arizona, was forced to sign a compact with Arizona Indian gaming tribes. So our little tribe opened up the door for Indian gaming in the state of Arizona. So with that, I want to say thank you on behalf of the Fort McDowell Yavapai Nation Cultural Department. Thank you for your time and your listening hearts. At this time, since it's fresh in your mind, do you have any questions so far? Yes.
This is for recording, it's not amplifying.
Okay, so thank you for your presentation. I learned a lot from it. I just wanted to quickly ask, what was the result of the compromise? So like, what were the terms basically behind it? So like, what kinds of restrictions were there and what paths did it open?
Are you talking about the Indian gaming?
Yeah, that's
Is
what I
that what
mean.
you're talking about?
Yeah.
I think Raphael can probably answer that a little bit better than I could. But what it did is it forced the governor to go into a negotiating compact with not just our tribe, but with all the 22 federally recognized tribes in the state of Arizona. And based on that negotiation, we were allowed to have Indian gaming, but they also did get, which is what they were after, the financial part of it, which I'm not sure we were giving at that time, but it certainly was, upped because of the revenue we were taking in. Raphael, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I can add more to that. What this essentially did was reduce gaming. Prior to this, in 1984, gaming was wide open. We could have all kinds of gambling. And when this happened, it reduced our gaming because we had to sign a gaming compact. And based on a decision from the United States Supreme Court, I believe it was in 1980, early 80s there, that was the challenge from the tribe, the Seminole tribe in Florida. Gaming pretty much was open until this happened. And so when this happened, it reduced gaming to a limited amount. And what it did to Fort McDowell was it limited Fort McDowell to the number of machines and number of gaming locations we could have to 2 based on our enrollment, tribal enrollment. Something you may not know, but in many tribes, and Fort McDowell too, the requirement is you have to be a quarter Yavapai Indian to be an enrolled tribal member, officially enrolled. If you're not a quarter, then you're not going to be enrolled. Of course, there's always the argument, those who were adopted, those who snuck in early on, that kind of thing. But still, the rule is today you got to be a quarter Yavapai, and that goes to other tribes that have it in various degrees of blood quantum. And some are adjusting that to just the lineage nowadays because the problem's pretty difficult to identify. The Congress, United States Congress, of which we are under, Indian tribes, will not intervene in a tribe's descendants or blood quantum or enrollment. And that comes from a case in 1984, from a case from Pueblo in New Mexico, Martinez versus some family there. And so based on that, Congress will not get involved in that because it's so tenuous and real. These are fighting words, actually, in a lot of Indian reservations, if you don't know. So it limited our gaming based on our enrollment. And today it's still limited us. And you saw the photograph with our president signing with Symington. I don't know if you saw the photograph. Our president did not want to sign that compact because he wanted the compact to be based on the market economy, on the market. And so we held out as long as we could. And in fact, we weren't the first to sign it. In fact, the tribe up in Prescott was the one to sign it first. And there were a few other tribes that signed on. We were like the 4th and the 5th because we were arguing the point that, hey, we shouldn't be limited by our enrollment. We shouldn't be limited by number of machines. We shouldn't be limited by this, that, and any other limitations that were put in there. We wanted it to be wide open. Unfortunately, with pressure from the other tribes to sign that gaming compact, because we were the leader in gaming at that point of what we were doing, peer pressure, so to speak, I guess, something you may know, we signed it. And that's a photograph that was taken. And today we're still under those limitations while other tribes still bounce ahead of us in gaming. I know the Pima, Maricopas, and the Gila River signed later. They just barely beat a deadline by a few hours to have their gaming issue resolved through a voting in the state of Arizona in 2000. This is several years after our event, but they had that one, and that occurred in that fashion. So
Thank
I'll
you
stop
for that.
there.
So also just be mindful that that in 1988, the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act passed. Under what president? Anybody know? Your history? 1988. Who? Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan thought that it would be a good idea to allow Indians to have gaming because of our economy. And he thought that he said that if it helps the economy, then they should be allowed to have it. So he signed it into law in 1988. But maybe as many of you know, I mean on a political level, that still a lot of states don't abide by what a president says. So Arizona on that particular topic obviously wasn't, because they came and tried to raid us. But there's a bigger, longer history that I don't have time to go into, but I can off camera if you want to discuss that. Anybody else? Yes?
Closer the different human languages to each other. Can you talk to somebody from Fort Mojave or Kachan? Or not so much? It was just a question about
I'm sorry.
how much similarity.
Here.
I'm not in the class, so probably the students know this, but how much similarity is there across the different human languages?
Very similar, but dialect is going to be different. So I guess I could give you one example. Here, you can put yours. So one example would be one day I was on a personal note. When we count, for example, when we count our in Yavapai, Fort McDowell, we say Siti, Waki, Muki, Hopa, Tadapatas, and so forth. And a friend of mine in high school, we were discussing language, and she was Wallapai. Can you hold that for a second? And I said to her, "Well, how do you say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in your language? Because I think yours is a little slower." And she said, "We say sittam, wakam, mukam." Versus, I said, "Oh, we say sitti, waki, muki." So not long ago, maybe a year ago, we had a visitor come in to our cultural center, and she wanted to look around, and she said that she was Hualapai. And I said, "Oh, you know, the Supai say sittam, waka. Don't you guys say sittam, wakam, mukam when you speak? Because we say sitti, waki, muki." She said, "No, we don't say either one. We say sita, waka, moka." You see those differences? From sitti, waki, muki to sittam, wakam, mukam to sita, waka, moka. So you'll have different dialects, but in a conversation, they can understand each other, or they'll figure it out. And I've learned that from the fluent speakers, that and even when we go up to, because sometimes we help out with language in Yavapai Prescott or Camp Verde or whatever, and they can talk right along with them, but you can tell there might be a slight difference. Great question. Okay, I'm going to finish up and let Tyler move forward with his slides, or his presentation.
Thanks, Lucine.
Yes.
Ray's next. Ray is former tribal president, and this clicker if you want. Use the clicker, just, or you can use the space bar too, sure, or the big button on that, and yeah.
By the way, very important, we don't ask for your pity. We're not asking for your pity. I know there's some gruesome things that you might have seen, but we're just hoping for a better future. Okay? That's what we're asking for.
Sorry.
many things, and these are just a very cursory view of what we're talking about and who we are as people. So, hope you know would understand that. I'm doing my portion on the Yavapai and the enterprises, and that's a photograph of Four Peaks, placed prominent east of us. And if you took beeline to Payson, you probably passed right by that if you saw it. And it plays very prominent. Also, it's the name of one of our, it's the name of our casino, the Leaf Pond Casino, Leaf Pond Golf Course. I'll talk a little more about that as I go along.
Wait, sorry to interrupt. Can you just hold
Oh, okay. Something else here. Okay, Fort McDowell Enterprises, first one of the Fort McDowell Yavapai Nation materials, was brought in probably about 1980s or thereabouts. That was our first enterprise there at Fort McDowell. It sat right there in the Grande Wash, and it was right next door to Fountain Hills. You guys know where Fountain Hills is at. You probably do. If you don't, it's right there. But it's right on the boundary of Fort McDowell. Only thing that separates us is a 4-strand barbed wire, and it's a pretty wealthy community. And so we were processing a lot of materials out of there, selling sand, dirt, and rock in the desert. Can you imagine that? Selling sand, dirt, and rock in the desert. We were doing that. We became quite successful to the point where we had to get bigger. And so we moved it across the river about 2 miles east and got even better at doing what we did. And you might see a lot of the red, we call it Yavapai coral. It's a red stone that lines many of our freeways here in the valley for a desert landscape. That's where a lot of that comes from. We mined that. We sold that to Arizona ADOT, to many other organizations for landscape material. A little key thing that came out of there that we found out was that some of the finer materials from that material was used on the baseball fields. We have professional baseballs that practice here in the month of March, and we found that material. They love that material, actually, and they still reorder it today. So that came out of that Yavapai materials that we still do today. The next item is the Fort McDowell Bingo in 1984. We opened modestly. You guys are all educators, you know, modestly. In 1984, and Klasine kind of touched on that. And we opened as a bingo, and we opened in a Butler building that still stands there today. A lot of key things that happened in there besides the standoff that Klasine mentioned. The federal government didn't like us operating like that. They wanted a cut of the pie. In years coming after '84, they formed the National Indian Gaming Commission, which oversaw a lot of the Indian gaming facilities throughout the United States. And there's probably only about 150 tribes here in the United States that practice gaming of any sort of the 560 tribes here in the United States. So there's a very small percentage of tribes that actually do gaming. I know sometimes the media says otherwise because they're trying to get your attention or impact of something else. So what happened was, because the gaming compacts didn't involve state tribal cooperation, the states went back to the U.S. Supreme Court and asked that the tribes and the state must develop an agreement where they cooperated both together to make the gaming facility work. And in 1988, the U.S. Supreme Court agreed. And so now, therefore, today you have a tribal state gaming compact. And we have the National Indian Gaming Commission as a part of the operation as well. As I mentioned in what I've said prior, we were limited to our enrollment to the building because of the size. We're today probably about 900 tribal members on the size of about 24,000 acres. We've been able to use the funding from that for many, many different things for our people at the Yavapai Nation. But in addition, we've also contributed to our local cities, towns, and counties in various formats, whether it be for environment, education, or various things. We do that every year. That's a part of the requirement with the Gaming Compact. We've also fund the Arizona, what is it, Arizona Office of Tourism. I don't know, you're very familiar. They have a big budget, huge budget, 24 million plus. And Indian tribes here in the state of Arizona collectively fund over half of that funding to the Arizona Office of Tourism. And you might ask, well, why do you do all this stuff? Because we realize bringing in business is a good thing. And so we did that agreement with the Arizona Office of Tourism today. So we fund a lot of that. And we bring in business for ourselves as well as for the whole state of Arizona. Today, we're moving into another aspect of gaming, which is you're probably familiar with. I think most of you are Gen Zs, right? You guys Gen Zs. I'm a boomer generation. I know you guys blame all of us for everything that's going on now, but you guys got your challenges such as we had too, and when we were boomers. But moving on, the challenge today is for gaming is the internet, the web. You know, a lot of gambling goes on the internet and the web, and so moving in that direction. And it's a very big challenge for us. There's a lot of jurisdictional issues that must be worked through and worked with as we move on. We've recently increased the size of the gaming facility. We've added a hotel as well to it. So back in 2006. That was a Fort McDowell Radisson in 2006, as you see there. 246 rooms, 18,000 square foot ballroom, 23,000 square foot total. That was a Radisson, and it's no longer a Radisson. It's branded under Kwevkepaya, our golf course now today. And the reason why we branded it under the Radisson was because we realized we needed the data. We needed some people's names that you volunteer to give up on your phone every day. And we needed names to market the facility to, because after all, we were new to hotel, to the business of hotel. And so we needed to do that. And so we did that, and we brought in the Radisson, and they allowed us to use their data and their information to bring in people from throughout the United States. We even built a temporary hotel room to take up some of the visiting guests, some of our proposed guests. And what we were aiming for was a small to medium conference groups. We weren't going for the large groups, we were going for the small to medium, therefore the 23,000 square foot total that we're looking at, an 18,000 square foot ballroom. And so today we still do that until we increase in size. And there's still a lot of room to increase in size there. It's now branded under our Kwevkepaya golf course. It's the Kwevkepaya Casino. And then we have going down to the next point is the Asakwe, and that's a Yavapai name, meaning Eagle View RV Resort, 150 space RV resort, 300 RV storage space. That one was, again, a move in the business of RVing. This time of year, there's a lot of RVs out here. You probably see them of all types and kinds, fifth wheels, travel trailers, motorhomes. I mean, they're all out there. And you'd be surprised how much business that brings in. That people come here even in the heat of summer. When it's 110 out, there's RVers out there moving. They're moving from either California to the Midwest or Midwest to California, or they have to be here, or there's nursing, or there's auto repair groups that move in. You were thinking, probably, well, why would auto repair people move in? Well, this one time that I was there, I managed the property at one time, and a freak hailstorm came through, and it damaged a lot of the new car dealers' autos. And so these auto repair body shop people knew that, and they travel throughout the United States. I didn't know this. All of a sudden, we had an overload of people that wanted to put up reservations there at Eagle View, and so we took them in, and as we did, the word got out that they were all body shop and mechanics and this kind of thing, and they were coming here because of the hailstorm that passed through. So you see people that take advantage in that way, and that was kind of the odd things that happened. But through this, what we found out is as we go through is these folks like to gamble as well, is that you bring in a whole different sort of business to the operation. This is a standalone business by itself. It doesn't rely on gaming. It doesn't rely on anything other than RVers. And RVers are looking, once they stop RVing, and we used to say once they stop running from the grandkids, they need to look for a place to store it. and we got that storage space for them right there. And so we'd like to make that storage space a lot better. Fort McDowell Adventures opened about 1988. It was a group venue, Western outdoor themed. And with that, we struggle with that one. And I think that a lot of times we don't know what kind of business that really is. I worked there at one time in my past, and the way we worked with that was with destination management companies here in Arizona, a DMC. And there's over 30 of them here in the valley. And what they do is they market to large corporate organizations throughout the United States and internationally. And all we did at the time was we marketed Fort McDowell Adventures to the 30 DMC companies here in the state. And they would sell us, and they would sell it as their property. And so they would bring out parties of various sizes, which Christine and I were attended here recently. Big theme, I can't remember the guys.
Chick-fil-A.
Performer, yeah, Chick-fil-A was here. They did awards to their top managers, and that's how you do it. And we used to do that. Now they struggle because no one there really knows how to market to the DMCs and let the DMCs do all the work. And we would lease the property to them. It's a beautiful place. It was opened by a dentist, and it remains there. It's still open. We still do business, just not as much. Baja Chevron Gas in the 1970s began as an ARCO, Atlantic Richfield. It sat on the opposite corner of where it is today. Convenience store items, gas, fuel, that kind of thing. Very successful. Looking forward to developing that further, maybe into a truck stop. Truck stop is needed out there. It offers all the conveniences you can think of at a gas station, even expanding that to maybe a food stop of some kind, Subway, McDonald's, whatever it might be. So that's still there, and it's a good property. That's the last stop going to Payson. If you were on that road on Beeline Highway going to Payson or coming back, that was probably the first or the last stop, either way. Kwevkepaya Golf Course opened in 2000. 18 holes of award-winning golf experience. And it's a beautiful course. Scott Miller designed that. Scott Miller was a designer. He still is, I believe. And he worked with Jack Nicklaus for 13 years designing golf courses. And that was the first 18 holes. We didn't know the much business about golf courses when we developed the golf course. But when we first designed and built the first one, we oversized it with the intention, knowing that that another 18 holes would go in at some point. And truly another 18 holes went in 2006, which is the Saguaro course. And in addition, is when the hotel in 2006 went up. So, and also a bridge was put in during that development. And so oversizing the infrastructure system at that time proved very important for us and worked very well for us at that time. We had some good designers, good people working for us at that time, and they knew a lot about these things. The clubhouse for the Kwevkepaya was designed by Doug Fredrickson, who's going to be out at the fundraiser this Saturday night, Tyler, as I understand. He was the guy that designed the clubhouse. And before that first clubhouse was built, the Choi course, there was word out there already on the street that it's going to be the best, the #1 golf course in the United States when it was built. Because we had many golf. Anybody golf here? No. The film, the producer back there knows. But yeah, it was known that, and people who love golf will go anywhere to golf. They'll travel miles. They'll travel across the world, half the world, to golf. And we didn't know much about the business other than what we were hearing. And before the first 18 holes was complete, we received an award, and we went to San Francisco to pick it up at the Moscone Conference Center about the best, what was called the Gold Nugget Award. And that was the best golf course in the U.S. to be built at that time. And so That was a Scott Miller course. We built that, and it was beautiful. Still is beautiful. We do have a second 18 holes, the Coor Crenshaw course that's open now. That's won some awards on its own as well, and it's a beautiful course, a beautiful golf course. Fort McDowell Farm, that was started probably in about 1970. 600 acres of alfalfa, 50,000 pecan trees, 32,000 citrus trees. A lot of trees out there. When that was developed based on, well, the farm was developed first. And as the time went on, we realized we weren't getting the water we should be getting from the Verde, despite being accessible to the Verde. And we filed a lawsuit, and we found out we haven't been receiving any water for a long number of years, really. And we filed a lawsuit, and off that lawsuit, among the lawsuit was a $13 million settlement from the federal government. And that $13 million was to be used for economic development of some kind. And therefore, that $13 million went towards the 50,000 pecan trees and 30,000 citrus trees, in addition to a farm building and all the infrastructure to the pecan and citrus trees, a pump station, micro-irrigated, computerized system, and diversion system off the Verde for the water for that. So that's how we developed that, and that's operational today, by the way. One time we sold a lot of our pecans to China prior to COVID, and COVID ended that. And today we sell it to the market now, and it's processed through the market. The citrus, Sunkist comes in first, take their first pick from there, and then after that, the local markets come in and pick the citrus. I have a variety of citrus. One of the curious ones out of there is always the grapefruit. You probably know the grapefruit, very sour. Many of the elders don't like it because it has a negative effect on their medication, right? Well, we have a grapefruit that's sweet. There's several trees out there, 20 trees, I guess, of grapefruit, and the fruit from it is sweet, and it's a combination of tangelo and a grapefruit, and it grows from, it was grafted in. They do this stuff nowadays, grafted in, and it grew, and it, on the same tree, you'll see a tangelo and a grapefruit. And some of them, it's more tangelo, some of them, it's more grapefruit. So we produce that, and I always thought that was odd, but we do that. The photograph there on the right-hand side, black and white, shows my grandmother there, shows a mountain spirit dancer there. That's a photograph, and I don't know if you can see it on the upper right-hand side. It says 1984. I believe that was a picture from the Arizona Republic when our casino was opened, or our bingo hall, actually, in 1984. And that was a blessing that was done at that point. All right. Okay. We celebrate the spirit and determination and the will of the Apache people to overcome adversity and hope for a better future. I think that's kind of what I mentioned when we began. We're not asking for your pity. We're just asking for a better future. And I think we can all work towards that, and all believe in that. And that photograph there is the fairway on the ninth hole of the Choya course. Kind of famous, actually, if you're a golfer. I'm not a golfer, by the way. I just hear them talk a lot, and I eat lunch sometimes at the clubhouse, and I hear them. But this is, if you hit this right, this is a 4 par. If you hit it right, that ball will roll all the way down just right next to the green. Maybe a tip for you if you ever play there. If you ever want to come play there, let me know. If you hit it just right, you can roll it right to the green. So that's a beautiful picture. These pictures of the golf course are always beautiful. You see the greenery. It's manicured very well. Better than my yard and better than your yard too, probably. So it's a beautiful place. Come on out and play. So that's my presentation. Thank you very much for listening.
Where's
Yeah,
the
there
other
was another
microphone?
mic floating around here somewhere. It's
Deb,
I'll just grab it.
So do you know where those sweet grapefruits are available for
Ray
purchase?
needs one.
Yeah. They're in the hills. The trees were planted, citrus trees were planted in the hills to reduce any freeze that would happen. When it gets cold, it would roll right through. They're up in the hills.
No, where can you buy them?
I think David wants to buy.
You can buy them actually at most of the citrus stores in the East Valley and ask for them.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
ask
there's
for them.
just like, what are they called then?
Boy, I don't remember what they were called, but ask for the sweet grapefruit.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Right here.
Oh, Abby, okay. The best oranges I've ever had in my life, by the way. Yeah. they
I
really are.
also have a question about grapefruit.
Okay.
Oh,
Pink
well,
grapefruit.
are these the pink grapefruit or are they something different?
Yes, they're pink grapefruit.
Because I've heard of pink grapefruit and that they're much sweeter and they're not quite as sour as the yellow.
They're not
ones, the
sour
white
at all.
grapefruit. Yeah.
Unless you eat the rind. But if you peel it and you eat the inside, the meat, it's sweet. Yeah.
And also, do you guys ever donate grapefruit, like leftover grapefruit, to like food banks?
We might. I haven't
I-
talked to the farm manager. We might do a lot of that. Yeah. We also have a lot of the East Valley places come and pick. Sunkist comes through and picks all their fruit, their prime fruit. They're looking for size, color, texture, all that, right? And they got pickers that come through and they pick all that. And then after they get done, and there's a lot still left after that. And then locals come through.
I also work with, through our tours with our farm director. Actually, it's Harold Payne actually started our farm, but he still works in an advisory role. But to get to your question about whether we donate or not, it would be good to contact him. His name is Harold Payne
Or
from
I'm
Fort
just-
McDowell.
I'm just asking because I work at a food distribution and we get like pallets of grapefruit.
Oh, okay.
A ridiculous amount, especially this time of year. So
But he does donate to certain things, like, because as Raphael mentioned, we do have a lot over, and then sometimes comes to the community for our big community gatherings. By the way, you can also purchase pecans from our Pacha gas station, the Chevron, at Fort McDowell if you're ever going out. So I don't think they're that much for a little, bag of pecans, and they're really, really good.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, you ask maybe, how do we end up with pecans and citrus? We went through a whole search for different types of fruit or something to grow. And at the time, Harold Payne was a contractor with a designer that was working, Stanley Franzo and Corey, here in the valley. They're an engineering company, and they were designing all the facilities. And he's an agronomist, and we hired him from them because we knew he knew the business of planting and fruits and things like that, market. And so through him, after looking at a variety of many plants and fruits and nuts and things like that, we settled on pecans and there's a variety of citrus.
Yeah, I had a question. Is your cultural center and/or museum, is it open to the public?
It is. We actually have, I believe, outside here, we did bring some brochures. So on your way out or whatever, you can pick one up. There you go. It's got the hours on the back. Yep. Okay.
Oh, we got a couple more. The one golfer in the room, I saw you put your hand up.
I was just curious because you've been able to build your economy so much. How is that reflected in your community? Like, what ways have your community been directly benefited by this accumulation of some wealth?
Well, we share in the dividends of these operations. Gaming's a whole separate monster of itself, and that's a separate thing. But the business enterprises that I went through, their royalties or revenues get shared within the tribe or get used towards the infrastructure, the welfare, education of the tribe in many respects. Right now, I realize it's pretty difficult for us right now, but we're coming out of that. We got some good leadership in place. They're looking at our budget and moving forward from them.
That's good to hear. Yeah.
Clear as mud, huh? Good. I know I can't answer it
pass
all.
it around.
There's just
Yeah.
so many questions. But I'll try.
Thank you, Ray.
Thank you, Ray. I'll grab this. I'm pre-wired for sound, so I'll put this right here.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. Okay.
I think it's really great to get a full picture of Fort McDowell, right? If we take Glicine's history and the contemporary history that Ray has talked about, it gives you a nice full picture of, like I say, one of our neighbors that's just like 30 miles from here. Now, for the interest of time, because I know some of you have to get to class, it's okay if you have to leave. I understand. Leave if you need to. I am going to make my part very, very short, because I know you've got class to get to and meetings. So I'm going to talk very briefly about the work that I started doing out at Fort McDowell about 5 years ago. I was invited by, now he's a councilman out there, Albert Nelson, it was during the pandemic actually, to look for ways to kind of get the language program going. Not a lot had been happening out there in terms of language revitalization. So that was about 5 years ago. And this led to a whole bunch of different things that I'm going to speak about very, very quickly. This is one of my favorite pictures. So I had to put it up there. I'm going to talk very briefly about this. This is a project that we've been working on for the past, it's almost 3 years now. And it comes out of, well, I'll start with this. Ahat Amjo Ume. So when we bought all this equipment, they had a grant from the administration from Native Americans, and we got all this equipment out there, and we had a good discussion about what you would like to do, right, in terms of documenting the language, and we settled on a story, or we settled on a part of history pretty quickly, actually, about Orme Dam. And one of the, like I said, I'm going to be very brief about this. When we start recording this language, or recording language in general, we set ourselves up for a very big task, which is to be able to write it down. Some of you in my classes are faced with this right now. It takes quite a long time to do it. And to be able to create a record of the language, to be able to capture the language in a way that we could use it to teach and to create language materials, we have to get, really into the trenches with some of this, right? So this gives you an example, a very simple example of the kind of work that's involved in a very simple phrase, a very short phrase like that. We've got the language to write down, and the next line are what we call tags. Those are just basic translations of words. And then this third line is a kind of a breakdown of the parts of the word. And then we have a translation. Glicine talked about the human languages, so I can go through this fairly quickly. This just gives you a map of the greater. They start all the way down Baja California and then all the way up to the Colorado River and the Grand Canyon. So what we're working with here, so we also had a picture of this that Glicine had a little bit earlier. These are the Yavapai languages, okay? So, for a linguist like me, we are going to see these as kinds of dialects, okay? And what defines dialects? It could be the way somebody talks, it could be the different words they have. And usually what we do, meaning linguists like me, it's like we look at language and we look at ways of writing it down and documenting it and figure out how the grammar works and maybe make a dictionary. But we're often not sensitive enough to these differences, right? The way people talk in the different dialects. And so one of the things that I wanted to do is take that much more seriously. Okay, because, as we all speak here and we all have a dialect, our English or whatever language we speak comes from somewhere. And so there's an attachment to that. It forms our identity, and it's really important to capture that. So Kwevkepaya, this is where there's Fort McDowell right there if you can't see it. And this goes all the way up to Prescott and whatnot. I can share these slides with you, by the way. And you've all heard me talk before, so that's why I'm going kind of quickly. You can always ask me about this later. We've got a couple of resources, but nothing super recent. Okay, and there's a nice dictionary that we work with, but it's not from here. So when we do this kind of work, we sort of gather the things that we can and try to make something out of it to help us do our work. I'm going to say something very briefly about this. Many of you, and here have heard me talk about this already. We practice what is called community-based participatory research. Okay, and the takeaway here, the purpose of that, I'll just jump right down to that, is about creating knowledge. That's what we're doing when we're writing language down. Okay, we're making knowledge, but that knowledge doesn't just sort of exist, out in space. It has to be situated somehow. And we do this, we create knowledge in a socially meaningful, actionable, and responsive to community-defined priorities. So the kind of work that I do as an outsider, and you and ASU as neighbors, is to be maximally responsive to what is needed, okay? And so over the past, I would say about 5 years, but really this has picked up intensity in the past couple of years, is to sit down and talk about what it is that's needed, okay? I could put that, what is needed, so to speak. And, these are some of the things that we're working on. Some of them are aspirational, some of them are happening at the moment. The first thing is to write Yavapai, okay? This is something we take for granted. We write all the time. We've got dictionaries of whatever language it is that you want to learn, pretty much. And so, we take that for granted to be able to write, and this is a goal. So we've been working on that. Eventually these feeds, having a writing system in place, you can think about what it is to make a dictionary and sentence structure so you can teach them. I gave you a brief sample of that earlier. That's not a, that's a quite involved task. And then of course creating resources for language learning and generating language within the community. And the further we go down, the more aspirational it is. We've been having these weekly language meetings for quite a while now, actually, with, we're quite consistent about that. Sometimes they're a little more spaced apart, but we're really cooking with that right now, meeting every week. And I've done workshops out there. Like I say, going all the way back to the pandemic, we did a bunch over Zoom, actually, back in 2020. So that's really great. Supercharging, right? So I'm really happy that I've been able to bring some of my students into this kind of work, because there's a lot of work. Like, it's a lot. Not any one person can do this, and nor should they, actually. My goal all along through all of this work was to get people involved with it, students involved, because working out at Fort McDowell with the people that you've met today it's such a rewarding experience, like on a personal level. I think you can get the sense of that. It's something that you can really personally connect to. I certainly do. And it's really, really meaningful work, and it's also just really a lot of fun. I mean, we have a lot of fun doing it. So far, we've got like 6 of us that are working in our program here that are doing different things with the program. 5 of us. We've got An, who's here, is working on language education material. A lot of this is just sort of beginning. We're just kicking things off. Bill has been working on a video, which I do not have time to show you today, the Orme Dam video. And then Justin's here. He was here. He's working on natural language processing, things that we could use, tools that we could use to look at words and to build a dictionary. Ellie, who couldn't be here, everybody's in class today. She's working on syntax and semantics, and Scott is doing some stuff with plurality and counting. All these things get drawn together, right, into some kind of whole eventually. These are long-term. This is not something that happens in a summer. These things take years, okay? And that's why it's really great to have somebody doing a PhD, because that takes years. So why not use those years for something? And so that's what we're doing. So I just have a selection of pictures here of the kind of work that we do. One of the things that I find so rewarding is the fact that we all get together in a room and we work together. Okay, and we've got we always have food to eat, the generosity of the museum, and drinks, and we just have a really great time. And We all take turns writing the language, working together. There's Bill up there. Okay, we fill up these whiteboards. If I had more time, I'd go through that and show you how the sort of nitty-gritty of that method. We've had events here and there, like special events that we do, filling up lots of whiteboards again. And that's it. I'm going to be very speedy about this because lunch is waiting, but we also have, to sort of round off our experience here, is something not so much about slides. In fact, not about slides at all. The last thing that we have together with Donald Beckman, we've got some things that he'd like to share with us, some music and some song. And then after that, we'll have something to eat. I'll guide you over there. I'm going to move this out of the way and stop talking now. You can always talk to me later. You always hear me. Yes? I don't know. I might have to follow him with the mic. Yes, come and talk to me later if you want more details on these things. You want to sit down, Donald?
No.
Okay.
I got tired of sitting. I feel like I've been running a mule. Hello, people. I'm here to talk about Orme Dam, and we're here to sing. I sing because the old people, they taught me everything. No school. All about Indian. Gotta be smart, so I'm smart. I got a brain that works. I could read all of you guys' mind. Don't judge me and say I don't. I do. What I brought from the medicine man and the people that had believed with God. That's why you go to pilgrim school, you only learn about what is here, you know. You don't have anything in your brain to open up that brain to learn about the language. So you got to be real, because what my ancestors told me, they came to corrupt our land. So that's true, you know, and money and everything. And I seen it in you too, cowboys say, you Indians can't do nothing with your land. We do. We corrupt it and ruin it, and we're here and we take your land. So that's what my ancestors tell me. So I stick with them, you know. Say whatever, and they teach me how to sing. I could sing anything. I could do anything. Anyway, we're going to sing. I'm going to sing about Orme Dam song. So. They showed me about Fort Peaks. I know about that mountain. That mountain is a lady laying there. If you look at it real good, she's pregnant. And when you put an imaginary mother there telling her she's pregnant, it's going into her life. Red Mountain is the family's there. You can see it. If you know how to see things, you know. And it's there. If you go on Shea and Beeline, Shea, come this way, you see the Red Mountain. It's called Kwevkepaya in Indian, means Red Mountain. And you see the pictures, the chiefs, the ladies, and Fort Peaks. It's the child pregnant laying over there. If you look at it real good, the Four Peaks. They call it Four Peaks. And the end of it means Wikojesha, pointed rocks. But anyway, there's whoever put it there, I think God did. If you pay attention, you see the child laying there, still there yet. That's what it showed in here, but nobody talked about it. I learned it by growing up by the elders. Don't ever forget about that pregnant lady in Four Peaks. Never forget about Red Mountain with those chief and the mother and the two uncles there. They appear. That's what nobody talks about, but I do because my ancestors tell me. Says, see Four Peaks? That's that lady over there pregnant, and the imaginary mother's there talking to her about life and pregnant, Thank you very much. Wow. All right.